We just took our PSVR headset off, so we just got out the VR world of Battlezone. That was a really interesting and arcadey experience. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So how did you approach the design for this game? Of course, keeping in mind the source material.
Yeah, well, we're big fans of the original coin-op arcade machines. We're hugely pleased and honoured to be carrying the torch for that brand that means so much to us from our childhoods. The Kingsleys and I both put many coins into that machine when we were young, and so it's great fun for me to be able to sort of try to take the spirit of that game and then bring it up into the 21st century, and especially with VR. We consider that to be the grandfather of VR in many ways, that game, especially if you found a cabinet that had the kind of the binocular things that you could push your eyes up against. The whole rest of the arcade disappears and you're focused in on the screen. And that first-person experience, being in that virtual world as a kid playing an arcade game, VR is the first thing that's really offering that to us now. So it's a nice piece of synchronicity that commercially available VR has risen up at the same sort of time as us acquiring that license, which we were thinking about VR. Or I'm sure the Kingsleys were thinking about VR when they got hold of that license. But mainly, I think they got it because they just wanted to have it, because they're fans.
Do you think Battlezone can be like the game that fits VR the most? And how do you approach the design of the VR aspect of the game?
Well, there's lots of stuff that works in VR. I think a surprising amount. When we first began developing, there are no rule books. There's nobody saying what you can and can't do in VR. But I think we probably assumed as developers that most experiences would be some form of first-person cockpit game. It seems to fit that VR idea. In fact, some of the best games I've played on VR have been third-person games. There's really not very much you can't do. You have to be thinking in different ways, but there aren't many genres that can't work. From my point of view as a designer, ordinarily, if the Kingsleys asked me to make a first-person shooter, I've got a huge library of games that I can reference. I can see how people have solved the kind of problems that game design might throw up in other ways. And you look for little ways to innovate within that, but broadly speaking, you know where you're going with it. In VR, we quickly realized that that wasn't true. We had a whole new set of rules, a whole new way to think about doing things. But with that comes a great opportunity to innovate. Everything we're doing is, we have blank pages of rule books that we're starting to fill in now. So to be one of those kind of pioneering companies working in this field right now at this time is very exciting from a design point of view.
What about the controls? I've been trying the game, of course, with a PS4 controller in hand. Then you can move around your view, you can check on things and stuff. How did you approach the controls, and do you think we can get past the cockpit experience for VR?
Well, the controls really, the way that it works with the DualShock controller was kind of our first. That's where we went straight away. That was almost like the bit of the experience that we understood right from the get-go, was that I wanted a dynamic arcade experience. So I wanted to be able to swing my tank around and, move relatively rapidly around it. And at the same time, it has to feel like a tank. It has to feel vehicular, but I want agility as well. So the DualShock actually is sort of first choice for that. The twin stick controls offer us these two axes of movement. And then we started to learn what VR meant, that looking around as well, what that offered us in gameplay terms, in terms of like locating enemies and that kind of thing. And so we've solved many problems along the way to get to a point where it feels like an arcade game. It's got its DNA is an arcade game, and ultimately that's where we've arrived, and I'm very pleased with that.
Do you think it's going to be tricky to get off the cockpit experience for other VR games in the future?
I think that there are more problems to solve. Yeah, I think so. But if this platform takes off the way I hope it will and believe it will, then I know that there are a lot of very smart, very motivated people looking for really good solutions to those problems. And I've seen many interesting solutions. There are various forms of rapid teleportation. If you're using, say, like Move controllers, the idea of sort of zapping yourself into a different place might sound very strange from a conventional gaming point of view, but actually it's really quite a natural thing to do in VR. So, and then things like room scale offer all kinds of new movement opportunities. So, whilst it throws up new issues to solve, that's why they pay us the big bucks. That's why we do it, and that's what we're in the industry for. We want to be looking for cool solutions to those problems. So these aren't problems. These might be problems to everyone else, but to game designers, they're opportunities, and they're fun opportunities as well. So, cockpit games give you one type of set of problems to solve. If you're going to do like a foot-based walking game, you have to solve that problem in a different way. But there are lots of different ways to think about cockpits. It doesn't have to be like a big tank like ours. You can have virtual sort of arm distance spaces, perhaps sort of translucent walls around you that you can bring up. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that give you the sensation of having near field contact with something. That really helps when you're moving around in a space. There's a I've forgotten the name of it. There's a dinosaur researching game. It's called VR. I can't remember the name. I'm sorry. But it was one of the first things we played on Oculus, and in that you're in a kind of a holographic sort of bubble, and you go around looking for information about dinosaurs. Fantastic! It's really, really good. But it's a very lightweight cockpit. It doesn't feel like you're in a vehicle. You feel like you're free roaming, but it does a lot of the useful things that cockpits do to present you with something that you feel that you can reach out and touch, and it gives you a kind of, it helps with the parallaxing sense that you may have, all of which contribute towards sort of muting that confusion about motion and some of the negative side effects that may go with that.
That's really interesting. What about the sound? That's something that's not usually discussed, but of course is crucial to the VR experience, the surround sound, the sound effects, and in order to get you inside the world. How did you approach that for this game?
Well, we use binaural sound, so all of our sounds are positionally located around us. So, for example, you'll probably have noticed if a shot misses you, it whips past you and it makes a sort of noise as it goes. And even when you can't see them, you can feel them, and the binaural sound works really well for that. So shots going overhead, you may not catch them in your view, but you're very much aware that they're there all the same. And all of our enemies make a distinctive noise. We've got noises when they spawn in, when they move. They have these kind of, exciting noises. And all of that is really important for locating where they are. And it all enhances the illusion of being in the space as well. The more convincing we make that, the fewer times your brain starts reminding you that you're in a virtual world. Our goal here is to make you forget that. I don't want you feeling conscious of the headset or really even conscious of the controller. I want you completely absorbed into the world. And I think we're getting there. I think we're doing a pretty good job in that respect.
The demo was really nice. It was just shooting around, but that's what this is about, of course. So, but you told me that there is further objectives and types of missions. So I think this. Let's have readers and viewers have this clear.
Okay. So we have a procedurally generated campaign. So we have a bunch of different maps, different arenas and environments. You saw at the end of the demo a few glimpses of some of the environment types that we've got. So they have different weather and different environmental structures. And then we have a bunch of different missions. So they range from, attacking enemy bases, defending installations of your own, taking out enemy convoys or specific targets, shield levels, which are a particular part of the structure of defeating the enemy. Ultimately, at the end of each playthrough, there's the bad guy. This is, after all, unashamedly an arcade game. So you have to get to the bad guy and kill him. And we are referencing the original arcade coin-op Battlezone there by using a volcano. There's a sort of mythological volcano in the coin-op that sort of bubbles away on the horizon. And there were rumours that you could get there in the original arcade game, which may or may not be true. I'm not going to dispel anybody's dreams in that respect. Well, in our game you can, and so that's the goal. So you do that by stepping from one battle zone to the next, and that hex map that you saw at the beginning of the demo is a very small example of that. But the entirety of that map is procedurally generated at the beginning of a playthrough. And then there are various kind of metagame structures around as well, in like unlocking new equipment, new weapon types and so on. So there are components of the game which we've taken inspiration from roguelikes like Binding of Isaac and so on. Those kind of, an FTL was influential for us, that give you that sort of endless replayability. Because we're very conscious that whilst the experiential aspect of VR is powerful, I don't want players spending money on their headsets and then finding that they're not going back and playing the games that they're buying for it again because they're short experiences rather than full-blooded games. Well, we are making a full-blooded game here. It's what we do at Rebellion, and there were never any questions about that. We are making a AAA VR game that I want people playing a year from now.
Does that include any sort of multiplayer mode?
We are not announcing anything about multiplayer at this stage. It's under consideration.
Okay, now that you mentioned, closing one, now that you mentioned the original game and the arcade game, how did you approach the graphic design for it and the visuals? Because that's crucial. In order to get that right, a retro game done right today, that's kind of difficult.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of the retro gaming movement, if you want to call it that, and the original arcade games. I was there for the first when they were there the first time round. So it's very much the reason I'm here making games now. Starts in an arcade in 1980 playing Battlezone. So yeah, we want to put our own spin on that and update it, but at the same time pay homage to those kind of the visual development from that time. One of the references, of course, are things like Tron, but that in itself takes its reference from Battlezone. There's a Battlezone arcade cabinet in Flynn's Arcade, which is a message to Atari that Tron looks the way it does because of the Battlezone arcade game. And of course, that's all part of the sort of gaming sci-fi culture that inspires us and that we love so much at Rebellion. I mean, also we make 2000 AD, the comic. So the mega cities of Judge Dredd's world feature in there as well as part of our inspiration. And on top of all of that, that sort of relatively stripped back kind of visual style works really well, we've discovered in VR. When you want everything moving around quickly, you've got to keep your frame rate high as well. But also the lack of clutter and visual noise helps to enhance the focus of any arcade game, which is the relationship you and your enemy have to one another. And we don't want anything kind of blurring that or confusing the eye too much. It's a sort of a computer's version of what the world looks like. We're telemetrically controlling a tank, and we're seeing a kind of a computerized interpretation of a world. I'm really pleased with the way it's coming out. It looks great. And it's another one of those things, though, that it looks cool in screenshots, but it looks amazing in VR. It really, that's where it really takes off.
Thank you very much for your time, Steve.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for playing.
Fire when ready. You made it. Well done.